just because even though what I'm going over isn't too important. So on Wednesday, the plan is I will go over Huffman encoding in class. So that's what I'll do on Wednesday. Now, prior to COVID, Huffman encoding was on the exam and on the final exam. However, ever since COVID and the chaotic nature of the semester, from people being out to having, to catch up and stuff, and the fact there was no assignment associated with Huffman encoding, I removed Huffman encoding, not from the curriculum, but from the exams, just simply so that there would be just one less topic to have to study. That said, going over Huffman encoding is very valuable, and going over how to compress things in general is very valuable. Now, what we do need to know for that is both trees and priority queues, which are heaps. So I will be going over that. So be sure to watch the videos on heaps if you can, so you can have an understanding. But priority queues are pretty easy to understand. They're queues that rearrange themselves based on who's got a higher priority. The common association with that is triage in kind of any kind of medical setting. These patients have a more pressing need, so they will be seen first. So I will go over that. It will not be tested on the exam, but it's still useful to know because Huffman encoding is a type of lossless compression. And as we'll see, there are two types of compression, lossy and lossless, which, so now exam 2, which again, tentatively is penciled in for not next week, but the week after, 29th. And I can push that back and I'm comfortable pushing that back to the 5th, depending on how that works for people. Okay. We'll go over trees and map, recursion, trees and maps. There will be a question concerning stacks and queues, but it's like in a multiple choice kind of variety, like and you'll see that there will be a number of questions that are like, here's a bunch of scenarios. Please choose the data structure. Please, which of these four multiple choice items is the data structure best used for this kind of problem? You'll have a practice exam next week. Okay. So it's not too, but for the most part, it will cover trees and hash maps / hash sets. Trees are and the vast majority of that is still trees. Recursion is covered, but it's done so in conjunction with trees. Like the coding questions are going to be recursive. You can solve them without recursion, it's just harder. Solving them with recursion makes it much easier. So just be aware of that. The homework for hash tables is due afterwards, just simply because it is the bigger one. You'll notice if you check the rules, it's one of the ones I don't drop. Now, that being said, Cheater's Hangman is just basically, Hangman is such an interesting game. And there's a YouTube video about how Hangman is an interesting game because honestly, you can cheat at it. And because the person playing is completely reliant on the person who's saying that whether their guesses are right or wrong, not, being trusted. And if you can just basically, and if you say yes and no in a consistent manner, you can cheat undetected. In fact, the same things that apply for Cheater's Hangman apply for Wordle. You could make it, there is I can't remember what I think it's Absurdle. Yeah, Absurdle. Yeah, Absurdle. That's what it was. Absurdle, I think, uses basically the kind of same thing where basically if you're not familiar with Wordle, it's mastermind with 5-letter words. But basically this will work under the scenes to basically show you how this, how basically my guess, where basically it's going to just simply choose things that basically have allowed to go on for the longest. Right, and so on and so forth. It will basically tell me that I'm wrong for as long as it makes sense. You know, so and as long as it makes sense to keep telling me I'm wrong, it will do so. So the same thing. So I'd be happy if you wanted to try to make your own version of that instead of Hangman. But Hangman is easy because the same principle applies. All right. And like I said, sorting, once you get to the into the tail end of the semester, it opens up. You can really do whatever language you want. This second to last one, 50 points. It's there because you probably haven't had to use an external library in Java before. And that's that's the big thing here. I'm having you basically make sure you've got an external library set up so you can use that library for the actual next problem, which is password cracking. This is one of the ones. Graphs is unique because I won't be writing the data structure from scratch, and in fact, I highly recommend you don't either. You could, but it's much more valuable to learn how to use an external, somebody else wrote. If you're doing it in Java, you'll want to use Jung, which I have a number of explicit instructions on how to get that set up in either Eclipse, IntelliJ, or NetBeans. Or if you're using Python, just use NetworkX. NetworkX is amazing. And you can use NetworkX and Python to solve that. And then other programming languages, I'm sure, have their own libraries. Okay. As we get to the final exam, we will have, once we get towards the final exam, I will take at least a week to go over practice problems. I will not write, but I don't write a practice exam for the final exam. Instead, what I do is I look at other schools' equivalent exams and pick out the equivalent problems and say, hey, let's solve these problems. Also, there's a couple of graduate entrance exams for that Tokyo University has. They have, and one of their questions is often a data structures question. So I take a look at some of the previous semesters and show you, hey, we know a quarter of basically this graduate entrance exam, which is highly math focused. Finally, as a reminder, please have your corrections turned in by Friday so that I can give you the credit you need. Because I do want you to learn from your mistakes that you make. Okay. All right, so I'm willing to take, so any questions about how the rest of the semester is going to go? Oh, right. Last thing, I will be going over the Cheaters Hangman sometime, basically the principles behind it sometime next week. So that to help you get started with it. Because that one is a lot of fun. It is a whole lot of fun. And I'll go over the different ways you can test to make sure it's working if you're using the same strategy I recommend for the computer to cheat. So that you can test and make sure that it's cheating in the way we'd expect it to. All right, any questions? All right. In that case, I'm going to unplug this and stop recording and stop sharing before I turn into a walking FERPA violation. All right, stop sharing and stop.